All right, guys, I'm honored to be able to be the one to wake you up if you haven't had coffee. Here we are, okay? So I want you to grab your scarves. You can have one or two depending on how many are at your table. And I'd also like to invite any exercise instructor up here as well to do some of the movements with me. If you would spread out yourselves across the room, like all the way to each end, that would be perfect, okay? Okay. Go like halfway. Hey, like there's perfect, and then we need someone at the very end. Yeah, just, you guys can figure it out. Spread out.
Stars above. Without it, life is a wasted time. Look inside your heart and I look inside mine. Things look so bad everywhere. In this whole world, what is fair? We walk the line and try to see, falling behind what could be. Bring me a higher love. Bring me a higher love. Oh, bring me a higher love. Where's that higher love? I keep thinking of. Bring me higher love. Bring me higher love. Worlds are turning, and we're just hanging on.
Great job, everyone. Big
Facing our
movements.
fear and standing out there alone. I yearn, yeah, and it's real to me. There must be someone who's feeling for me. Things look so bad everywhere. In this whole world, what is fair? We walk the line and try to see, falling behind and what could be. Oh, bring me a higher love. I'm all up. Bring me a higher love. Oh, bring me a higher love. My love, it's that higher love I keep thinking of. Bring me higher love.
Good, up and down.
Bring me higher love. Bring me higher love. Bring me higher love. Bring me a higher love. Bring me love. We need a higher love. Bring me, yeah, a higher love. I'm thinking of.
Not done yet. We have 3 more songs. Let's keep going, everyone. All right. gonna drum between our legs. Here we go.
Had to have high hopes for a living. Shooting for the stars, but I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision. Always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living. Didn't know how, but I always had a feeling. I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high.
Okay, figure eights.
Mama said, something for oddities, stranger kisses. Ain't never wanna be the winning the novelties that don't ever change. We wanted everything, wanted everything. Stay up on that rise, stay up on that rise, never come down. Oh, stay up on that rise, stay up on that.
Can you reverse it?
Come down. Mama said, don't give up. It's a little complicated, all tied up. No more love, and I'd hate to see you waiting. They say it's all been done, but they haven't seen the best of me. So I got one more run, and it's gonna be a sight to see.
Okay, take one of your scarves. Hold it wide. We're doing
Shooting for the
squats.
stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision. Always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living. Didn't know how, but I always had a feeling. I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living. Shooting for the stars when I
Pick up that second one.
didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision.
Doing a power rock. Power weight shift. Okay, we're gonna pause here for a second. We have another song, but I am going to attempt to do the wave, okay? So at the beginning of this song, we're gonna start down there. We're gonna do it multiple times. Goal is to have it go this way and then come back this way. We're gonna do it a couple times, okay? All right. All right. Go ahead and start down there. Put your scarves in the air.
I don't know what you've been told, but time is running out. No need to take a stroll.
Right, bring it back, bring it back.
Toe to toe. I should be scared, honey, maybe so. But I ain't worried about it right now. Keeping dreams alive. 1999 heroes. I ain't worried about it right now. Swimming in the floods, dancing on the clouds below. I ain't worried about it.
All right, good, thank you. We're gonna do rock and reach.
I don't know what you've been told.
Like a staggered stance if you have room.
So spend it like it's gold. I'm living like I'm 90 Got no regrets even when I'm broke. Yeah, I'm at my best when I got something I'm wanting to steal. Way too busy for them problems and problems to feel. Yeah, no stressing, just obsessing with
Good,
feelings
switch the foot you had in front.
Take it and let it go. But I ain't worried about it right now. Keeping dreams alive. 1999 heroes. I ain't worried about it right now. Swimming in the floods, dancing on the clouds below.
All right, big huggers.
I ain't worried about it.
And overhead.
I ain't worried about it right now. Keeping dreams alive. 1999 heroes. I ain't worried about it right now. Swimming in the floods.
Feel free to dance.
On the clouds below. I ain't worried about it. I ain't worried about it. I ain't worried about it.
There we go. Okay, we're gonna do one more. And I want you, if you're here with a caregiver, when it comes, you'll know the time, to point to your caregiver during the exercise. All right?
Guess this means you're sorry. You're standing at my door. Guess this means you take back all you said before. Like how much you wanted anyone but me. Said you never come back, but here you are again.
Marches!
'Cause we belong together now, yeah. Forever united here somehow, yeah. You got a piece of me.
All right, get ready to point. Find your caregiver. Point to them. Good. Back to those twists.
I was stupid for telling you goodbye. Maybe I was wrong for trying to pick a fight. I know that I've got issues, but you're pretty messed up too. Either way, I found out I'm nothing without you.
And march again.
'Cause we belong together now, yeah. Forever united here somehow, yeah. You got a piece of me.
All right, get those pointers out.
Being with you
Good. Give me a big
is so
overhead.
dysfunctional. I really shouldn't miss
Good
you,
night.
but I can't let you go. Yeah.
And we twist. Let's go fast. And we're gonna march next. Here it comes. You guys know what to do. Quick hip twist. That was a lot. Great job, everyone.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're going to turn the air on. Well, now that we've got everybody moving and grooving so that you can pay attention, if you've attended one of my PD 101 classes, you know I don't let you fall asleep. Okay? So, I'm excited to introduce our keynote speaker. Dr. Dorsey is a practicing neurologist and director of the Center for Brain and Environment at Atria Health and Research Institute. The center's mission is to identify root causes of the brain diseases, including Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, autism, and more. Together with Mike Oken, who was our keynote speaker last year, they published 2 books. The first one, Ending Parkinson's, a great book, and the follow-up, The Parkinson's Plan, which we're going to hear more about today. I have to shout out that in 2015, he was honored at the White House as the champion of change for his efforts to improve treatments and care for all those affected with Parkinson's disease. Dr. Dorsey is an internationally renowned movement disorder specialist, and his list of accomplishments are too great to tell you all about right now. Dr. Dorsey, we have been planning and preparing for you, and it is my honor to introduce you, and excited for the rest of the program. Dr. Ray Dorsey. Sorry. I meant to hit the button. We're going to have IT difficulties all day. There we go. And I also have a click.
Thank you. Good morning, Livonia. A little bit better. Good morning, Livonia. Yes. Outstanding. Thank you for all showing up. The first step to ending Parkinson's disease is for all of you in the Parkinson's community to make your voices heard. Can you make your voices heard? I love it. All right, so how many of you want to slow your rate of progression of Parkinson's? How many of you would like to find out why you got Parkinson's? How many of you would like to make sure that your children and grandchildren never get this disease? All right, we're in the right place. Parkinson's disease is not a natural consequence of aging. Parkinson's disease is not a natural consequence of aging. It's an unnatural consequence. You put a mouse in the laboratory and you let it age, it will never, never spontaneously develop Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's. The only way that mouse develops Parkinson's disease is if you manipulate its genes or expose it to toxic chemicals. Today, I'm going to tell you that the principal causes of Parkinson's disease do not lie inside of you. They're not in your DNA. They're not in your cells for the vast majority of you. They are outside of us in our environment. Chemicals in our food, water, and air are fueling the rise of this terrible disease, and you're going to be the generation that brings about the fall of Parkinson's disease. So Parkinson's disease was first described in 1817 by a 61-year-old British physician. His name was Dr. James Parkinson. And Dr. James Parkinson was a bit of a radical. He was arrested for a plot to overthrow King George III of Revolutionary War fame. He was a geologist, and he was an outspoken person for women's right to vote. At sometimes he wasn't very popular, but his fame today is because he saw something new on the streets of London in 1817. At the height of the Industrial Revolution, he saw people with a new disease, a disease characterized not only by a tremor, which had long since been described, but a stooped posture, a shuffling gait, this propensity to walk forward faster and faster, and to fall. And he said that this disease had not been described in the medical literature. And his essay on the shaking palsy, he described 6 individuals with the disease. 200 years later, in 2017, the Global Burden of Disease study estimated that 6 million people had Parkinson's. How do you go from a disease not described in the medical literature affecting 6 people on the streets of London to the world's fastest growing brain disease in the span of just 2 centuries? As all of you know, our genes don't change that much over that short period of a time. This is growing far faster than aging alone could explain, and growing much faster than other age-related diseases like stroke and dementia. And Michael and I wanted to know why that was happening. And we looked at this graph, and more recently, just last year, it's estimated that nearly 12 million people have this disease. Today, 250 Americans will be diagnosed with it, and 100 Americans will die with Parkinson's disease, which, depending on the study, is already the 14th leading cause of the death. Unnatural. And Michael and I look at this graph, and we see our report card. So Julia just said some nice things about me. This is my grade. And if I look at this, I think I'm failing. Parkinson's is rising, is one of the world's fastest growing brain diseases on my watch. And I don't like it. And so Michael and I don't like it either, nor do our colleagues Boss Bloom and many others. And so in our book, we give you a plan to bring about the fall of Parkinson's disease. We outline what are the steps that we can do to prevent or slow the disease if you already have it. What can we do to learn why the disease begins? The first step to curing a disease is to identify its cause. I can't think of a single medical condition that we can cure where we don't actually know its cause. If you get a bacterial pneumonia, we can figure out what caused your pneumonia and we can cure you. If you have a bleeding ulcer, we now know that that's not due to stress, but due to a bacteria, and we can cure you. There was a disease that used to be called non-hepatitis A, non-hepatitis B, because it called inflammation of the liver, and we weren't sure what it was. We discovered it was hepatitis C, and we can cure you. If we identify the cause of a disease, that's the first step to bringing about a cure. Third, we need to amplify the voices of those affected. The fate of diseases rests in the hands of those who are most directly affected. In the words of Michael J. Fox, Parkinson's disease sucks. And it's a huge burden, and for some people it's too much, it's enough of a burden by itself. I'm going to add to your burden a little bit today and say that you need to make your voices heard to change the course of the disease, not just for you, but for your friends and for your family members, because their fate is tied to yours. And then finally, in chapters 8 and 9 of the book, Michael Oken navigates the new frontiers of treatments. He tells you where the most promising treatments in the near term within the next 5 years, the midterm next 5 to 10, and the long term beyond 10 years. So many of you are told that Parkinson's disease is due to a genetic cause. How many of you carry a genetic cause for Parkinson's disease? Can you just hold your hands up? So there's a great study, PD generation. Where's Parkinson's Foundation? Somewhere in here is the PD generation. How many of you participate in the PD generation study? Outstanding. So this is a study led by the Parkinson's Foundation, offers free genetic counseling and genetic testing for Parkinson's disease. And they've enrolled, I think, 20,000 individuals, maybe more within this study. And in 2024, they published the results of the first 8,000 participants. 8,000 people like you, some of you in the room, this is your data. And they looked and said, what portion of people with Parkinson's disease in the United States and some other countries carry genetic cause or genetic mutation for the disease? And the answer turns out to be 13%. 13% of Americans carry genetic cause or genetic risk factor for the disease. Some of you know that the most common genetic cause is mutations in a gene called LRRK2. And the most common genetic risk factor, about 8% of people with Parkinson's disease, are mutations in a gene called GBA1. Said another way, 87% of Americans carry no known genetic cause or genetic risk factor for the disease. The vast majority of you in this room carry no known genetic cause or genetic risk factor for the disease. Two alternatives. One, we haven't found it, and there's possible that we haven't found some very rare ones. Or the principal causes of Parkinson's disease do not lie inside of you. They're not in your DNA. This is not a natural consequence of aging. The principal causes of Parkinson's disease are outside in our environment. Now, some of you say that as people get older, they're more likely to get Parkinson's disease, and you are exactly right. Indeed, longevity is a prerequisite to getting Parkinson's disease. If many of you read Brave New World, and there are no older people in the Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, and if everyone died at 40, there'd be very little Parkinson's disease. There would be very little Parkinson's disease, because Parkinson's disease is exceedingly rare before age 30 or 40, and it triples every decade thereafter. In most parts of the world, but not all parts of the world, it's more common in men than women. That graph is identical to the graph for lung cancer. Is lung cancer a natural consequence of aging? No. And it turns out that lung cancer is exceedingly rare before age 30. It triples every decade thereafter. In most parts of the world, it's more common in men than women, because more men than women have historically smoked. It also tells us that the seeds of this disease are not planted late in life, they are planted likely early in life. You don't get lung cancer at age 60 because you started smoking at age 58. You got lung cancer at age 60 because you might have been smoking when you were 18. The health you have today is not a reflection of your current environment. The health you have today is a reflection of your past environment. The seeds of Parkinson's disease for many of you are likely planted early, perhaps when you were a young adult in your 20s, perhaps when you were a teenager, perhaps when you were a child, perhaps when you were still in your mother's womb. This lung cancer in Detroit, Michigan in 1900 largely did not exist. Lung cancer, the leading cause of cancer death in the United States, leading cause of cancer death in the world, just largely did not exist in 1900 Detroit. It was so rare, according to the historian Robert Proctor of Stanford University, that it was considered a once-in-a-lifetime oddity. All the doctors and medical students would gather around when they saw a case, thinking they would never see another case again. Unfortunately, they were wrong, because 25 years after cigarettes were introduced in the United States, you see a corresponding rise in lung cancer deaths. In the 1970s, Americans stopped smoking. 25 years after Americans stopped smoking, we see a corresponding decline in the number of lung cancer deaths. Diseases are not permanent fixtures of humanity. Diseases come and diseases go, and it's time for Parkinson's to go. So what are the causes of Parkinson's disease? If it's not a natural consequence of aging, if it's not for most people due to a genetic cause, the principal causes vary by geography. You know, if you live on a farm, if you worked in the military, served in the military, if you worked in an industrial site, they vary. But in the United States, in Detroit, in Livonia, in Michigan, I think there are three major risk factors. One are certain pesticides. How many of you know about paraquat? So paraquat's a weed killer created in the 1960s, considered among the most toxic weed killers ever created. It kills the weeds that Roundup doesn't. It's so toxic it's been used to commit homicide and die by suicide. Over 70 countries, including China, have banned the chemical because the chemical, according to research done by Dr. Caroline Tanner in 2011, farmers who work with the chemical have a 150% increased risk of Parkinson's disease. According to research done by my colleague, Dr. Debbie Corey-Schlechter at the University of Rochester, if you expose rodents to paraquat, they move around less, and they have the pathological features of Parkinson's disease when you look at their brain. 70 countries, including China, have banned it. The United States has not. Got close. We're getting there. There's some good news coming. Unfortunately, paraquat is not the only pesticide that's linked to Parkinson's disease. Pesticides, synthetic man-made pesticides, were largely introduced in around World War II, and they function by damaging the nervous system of insects. That's how they work. Perhaps not surprisingly, if you design chemicals that damage the nervous system of insects, they might also have harm to humans. My colleague Virginia Rao studied chlorpyrifos, a pesticide that used to be sprayed inside the homes in New York City where I live to kill the bugs. New York City has a lot of bugs, so they had to spray chlorpyrifos in it. She studied the children of the women who lived in those apartments. She looked at the blood in the umbilical cord of those children, and she found the pesticide chlorpyrifos. Then she followed these children forward over time. The higher the level of chlorpyrifos in the umbilical cord blood, the lower their IQ at ages 3, 5, and 7. 2-3 months ago, she published a study in which she did an MRI of these children, now ages 6 to 15, and she found the higher the levels of the chlorpyrifos in their umbilical cord blood, the more brain abnormalities they had on MRI. And then she administered, many of you have had the Parkinson's rating scale, you know, where you're tapping the fingers and doing this and that. Everyone's done this. She did that to 10-year-olds, and they had slowed finger tapping. In addition to pesticides, there are other chemicals. One's called trichloroethylene. Trichloroethylene? No one? No. Trichloroethylene. So little chemistry lesson, no flashbacks, no flashbacks. Water is made up of 3 atoms, 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen, H2O. Trichloroethylene is made up of 6 atoms, 2 carbons in black, 1 hydrogen in white, 3 chlorine atoms in blue. It's got a cousin called perchloroethylene that's got 1 additional chlorine atom. Per is just a prefix meaning 4. And these 2 chemicals have been widely used in dry cleaning and degreasing. If you drank decaffeinated coffee in the 1970s, you might have drank some of this with it. If you've dry cleaned your clothes, you've likely been exposed to this or perchloroethylene, and it was widely used. These are also the principal contaminants at the Marine base Camp Lejeune. How many people know about Camp Lejeune? So Camp Lejeune is a large military Marine base on the east coast of North Carolina, near Wilmington, North Carolina. And between 1953 and 1987, the drinking water at this Marine base was contaminated with trichloroethylene, which is known to cause cancer. According to the World Health Organization, according to the EPA, according to the Department of Health and Human Services, this causes cancer. The drinking water at Camp Lejeune was contaminated with a cancer-causing chemical linked to Parkinson's disease. The Marine Corps knew about this for the latter years and did nothing. They knowingly exposed the best and bright of us, the most committed of us, to a cancer-causing chemical and did nothing. It took an act of Congress for them to mandate the Marine Corps to have the decency to notify Marines after their exposure of their exposure. This all came to the forefront because of a man. His name is he's a retired Master Sergeant, Jerry Insminger. His 6-year-old daughter, Janie Insminger, he was a drill instructor at Camp Lejeune. He had a daughter, Janie, who was 6 years old and developed leukemia while living at Camp Lejeune. 3 years later, she died, tore apart the family, strained his relationship with his other daughters, ended up in a divorce. Years later, while listening to the local news, he was pulling out a plate of spaghetti from the microwave when he hears a report that cancer-causing chemicals were found at Camp Lejeune. He drops his plate of spaghetti, is overcome by grief, but then he thinks about it. And he says, it wasn't just my daughter who was affected. It was all the men and women that I trained. He was a drill instructor. It was all their spouses. It was all their dependents. It was all the civilians who served there. It's estimated that 1 million people served at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1987. He served in the Marine Corps for 24 years. He's still living. For the last 27 years, he's been dedicated to bringing justice for Marines who served at Camp Lejeune. The first Camp Lejeune Justice Act signed by President Obama was named after his daughter, the Janie Insminger Act. In addition to these solvents, air pollution likely plays a role in Parkinson's disease as well. In 1800 London, Dr. Parkinson describes the condition amidst the London fog. The London fog has little to do with weather and a lot to do with air pollution. Air quality in 1800 London is equivalent to what's in Delhi, India today. It's equivalent to what happened in New York City when the skies over the Big Apple turned orange because of the Canadian wildfires about 3 years ago. You've probably experienced exactly the same thing here in Detroit. When you see that air pollution, you're seeing little pieces of dirt and soot suspended in the air. Most of them we cough out or sneeze out, but some are so small, 1/30th the width of my hair, that they can penetrate the nerve responsible for smell. It's called the olfactory nerve. It hangs up in our upper nasal passages. And this particulate matter can pierce that nerve and go in, and it brings in some dangerous hitchhikers. These hitchhikers include lead from leaded gasoline, iron from brakes, platinum from catalytic converters. And one of the earliest places you find the pathology of Parkinson's disease and the pathology of Alzheimer's disease is in the olfactory bulb, or the smell center of the brain. And as many of you know, one of the earliest features of Parkinson's disease and of Alzheimer's disease is loss of smell. So we have increasing evidence linking air pollution to Parkinson's disease, and especially air pollution to Alzheimer's disease. So tell you a little bit more about paraquat. It's sprayed everywhere, in almost every state in the United States, including here in Michigan. It's sprayed on fields of corn and cotton. It's sprayed on vineyards and on soybean farms. The good news, I told you, is that we're making progress. And last month, because all of you have started making your voices heard, last month, the principal manufacturer of paraquat said they were going to stop producing it in June. In addition, 12 to 13 states, red and blue, you can see a map on the screen, have introduced state bans on paraquat because there are still generic manufacturers of paraquat that are going to seek to, that are still selling it. 13 states have already introduced bans. Michigan has yet to do so. That's something that we can take action on regardless of what happens at the federal level. This is trichloroethylene. You don't have to be a Marine to have been exposed to it. In 1970, 2 pounds of trichloroethylene were produced per American. And it's estimated that 10 million Americans in 1970 worked with trichloroethylene. In the United Kingdom, 1 in 12 workers worked with TCE. And the list of occupations is large, including aircraft and jet engine mechanics, dry cleaners, embalmers, painters and printers, taxidermists, and varnish workers. In addition to the occupational exposure, you could have been exposed to it through consumer applications. Whether you like to clean carpets or clean guns, it's likely that you may have been exposed to trichloroethylene. If you use typewriter correction fluid like I did, you may have been exposed to trichloroethylene. It also has a wide amount of industrial uses and uses in the military. Because of its widespread use, up to 30% of the groundwater in the United States is contaminated with trichloroethylene. Up to 30% of the groundwater in the United States is contaminated with trichloroethylene. Many of you know that radon can evaporate from the soil and into your home and cause lung cancer. Well, it turns out that trichloroethylene is very volatile. It readily evaporates, hence its use in dry cleaning, and it can evaporate from underlying soil and groundwater and enter your home, your children's school, or your workplace, and you would never know about it. You could have been breathing in this chemical for years that's known to cause cancer and is associated with a 500% increased risk of Parkinson's. These sites are throughout the country. Many of you know about Superfund sites. These are the most toxic sites in the United States, designated by the federal government for cleanup. Over half of these sites are contaminated with TCE, including many in Michigan. Michigan obviously is home to the automobile industry. If you're producing automobiles, you need a degreased metal. You need a degreased metal to have before they're painted. You need to degrease the metal or clean the machines as part of the cleanup. Many of you likely worked in, how many people worked in the automobile industry? How many people think they've worked with TCE? So just look at that. Most people didn't know about TCE. There are more people in this room who worked with TCE than there are from genetic causes of Parkinson. So this is here in Livonia, Michigan. I gotta get my glasses on to read about this site. So this was a car manufacturing plant that used TCE for chrome plating. In 2006, TCE is confirmed at elevated levels in the groundwater under the Grantland Street neighborhood. In 2012, homes were investigated for vapor intrusion. That's the fancy word for the chemical evaporating from the underlying soil and groundwater and entering your home. And 2 houses are remediated. The nice thing, it's relatively easy to get the TCE or prevent the TCE from ever getting into your home. Many of you have had a radon remediation system put into your home. It basically sucks the air from underneath your foundation and vents it above your roof so it never enters your home. You can do the same thing to prevent TCE from entering your home, but most people who live near this contaminated site never know about the contamination, never know to have their home tested, and therefore exposing themselves to a cancer-causing chemical. And because once trichloroethylene gets into the groundwater, it forms a pocket, and that pocket can be moved with the groundwater, which is usually 15 to 50 feet below the surface, and form an underground plume. So you don't have to be right next to the former car plant. You can be in a suburban neighborhood a mile away and be sitting on top of a plume of trichloroethylene. Lest you think this is only happening in Detroit, I went to high school in Newport Beach, California. So one day I said, where's the last place in the world that I would find trichloroethylene in the United States? I said Newport Beach, California. So I did a very sophisticated research inquiry. I went to Google and I typed in trichloroethylene in Newport Beach. And Orange County, as some of you know where Newport Beach is located, is a former aerospace capital of the country. And there was used to be an aerospace facility within a quarter mile of where I went to high school. And that community, which is now residential with multi-million-dollar homes that overlook the Pacific Ocean, is sitting on top of a plume of trichloroethylene. And that cancer-causing chemical has been found inside the master bedrooms, living rooms, and children's playrooms in Newport Beach, California. How many people know about this plume? How many people worked at this facility? Did anyone work at this facility? But you know about the plume. You're going to tell me later after why you know about the plume, because I'd like to learn. This is a map of where air pollution is highest in the United States. The areas in red have the highest concentrations of air pollution. On the right is a map by Dr. Allison Willis, a colleague of mine at the University of Pennsylvania, maps out the areas of the country with the highest incidence, the number of new cases of Parkinson's disease. You can see whether your eyes tell you whether there's a relationship between areas of the country with high levels of air pollution, including in Michigan, and high levels of Parkinson's disease, and subsequent studies have confirmed that there indeed is an association. So that's the end of the bad news. The rest of this is all hopeful. We're going to tell you what you're going to do about it. So in our book, we tell you about how to prevent or slow the rate of progression of Parkinson's disease. If you are diagnosed with high blood pressure, what's the first thing the doctor's going to tell you to do? Decrease your salt intake. If you're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, the doctor's going to tell you to move and change your diet. If you're a smoker and you're diagnosed with lung cancer, the doctor's going to tell you to stop smoking. But if you're a farmer and you're diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, what should the doctor be telling you to do? Stop getting exposed to pesticides. How many people are drinking well water? So well water tend to be in rural areas. They're not regulated by the Safe Drinking Water Act. They're prone to contamination from pesticides. So if you have Parkinson's disease and you have a well, on your way home today, you're going to pick up a water filter. You can pick up at any grocery store so you can decrease your exposure to pesticides that might be in your wells. Because your wells are infrequently tested, and when they are tested, they're usually tested for bacteria so you don't get diarrhea. But they're usually not tested for pesticides or chemicals like trichloroethylene or perchloroethylene. And there's a company called Simple Labs, no financial relationship, that offers testing of your water by just sending a glass of water, and they can tell you if there are pesticides or chemicals like TCE or PC in it. So in our book, we give you the Parkinson's 25 actions you can take to hopefully slow your rate of progression of the disease, and 25 actions you can tell your children and grandchildren to take so they never get this terrible disease. In addition, we give you recommendations of what you can do in your community. In the process of writing this book, I came to learn that most schools spray pesticides on kids' playgrounds and the schools. Do people know that? Most schools spray pesticides, many of which I've told you are nerve toxins, on kids' schools and playgrounds, and we have the audacity to ask why 1 in 31 8-year-olds have autism. Susan Sontag, a photographer and writer who has since passed in New York, says, we should be serious, we should be passionate, and we should wake up. This is your wake-up call. There are reasons. Diseases have causes. Diseases have causes. That's a central tenet of Western medicine. Diseases have causes. If you find out what the causes of these diseases are, you can prevent them, you can slow them, you can treat them, you can cure them, you can create a world without them. So you can contact your children's school, your grandchildren's school, your favorite teacher and say, are you spraying pesticides on kids' schools and playgrounds? Can we please stop? In California, Rubina Sewell dropped off her 6-year-old son at Sherman Oaks Elementary School in Los Angeles. Her 6-year-old exits the car. A man in a hazmat suit is spraying the hedges with pesticides. Her son has an asthma attack in front of her. her son goes back to his mom and goes, Mommy, is this ever going to happen again? And she says no. And because she says no, California passes the Healthy Schools Act, which bans the use of most toxic pesticides on kids' schools and playgrounds, and requires that schools notify parents in writing before they spray pesticides on kids' schools and playgrounds. If that can be done in California, can that be done in Livonia? Can that be done in Detroit? Can that be done in Michigan? Can that be done in the rest of the country? Can we make it so that 1 in 31-year-old children are no longer getting autism? Can we make it so they're not getting intellectual disabilities? We've done this before for lead. When I was a child, 95% of American children had unsafe levels of lead in our blood. You're sitting here right near Flint, Michigan. And because we got rid of lead in paint, because we got lead in gasoline, lead levels today are 95% lower in children. It's estimated that your children and grandchildren are smarter than you by about 4 IQ points because they don't have lead. So that's fantastic. Why don't we do the same thing with pesticides, and who knows how much smarter they could be? Golf courses, as many of you know, how many people know about the golf course and Parkinson's disease? So great research done by my colleague, Dr. Brittany Krzyzanowski, a geographer in Phoenix, Arizona, who now works for us at Atria, and Rodolfo Civica, a neurologist at the Mayo Clinic, which tracks the number of new cases of Parkinson's disease, found that individuals who were newly diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, individuals who lived within 1 mile of a golf course were 126% more likely to be diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And golf courses spray 5 times as much pesticides per acre as do farms. And two of the most commonly sprayed pesticides are chlorpyrifos, the one that caused the loss of IQs in children in New York, and 2,4-D. If you served in Vietnam with Agent Orange, you might know 2,4-D because 2,4-D is a component of Agent Orange. Rachel Carson in 1962, when she wrote Silent Spring, wasn't arguing against the use of pesticides, which prevented millions of people from getting malaria in World War II. She was arguing against the indiscriminate use of pesticides. And if you want a poster child for an indiscriminate use of a pesticide, I would say it's using a component of Agent Orange used in warfare to keep our golf courses green. And then what can we do as a society to change this? We need to ban the most toxic chemicals, including paraquat, trichloroethylene, and perchloroethylene, and we need to stop subsidizing the use of pesticides. The 2 crops that are subsidized with the most of your taxpayer monies, $15 billion a year in taxpayer subsidies for agriculture, 99% of it goes to so-called conventional farming or chemical farming, only 1% goes to organic farming. The 2 crops that are subsidized the most are corn and soybeans. The 2 crops that are sprayed with the most paraquat in the United States are corn and soybeans. So in the book on page 237, if you haven't got a copy of the book and you registered, I think there are additional copies back there. I'll be signing copies at lunch and perhaps at the break, but definitely at lunch. And if you didn't order a copy, you can get one. There's a card on all your tables. You can get on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can get in the library, wherever you'd like to get your book. If you don't like to read, if you're not a book person, you just skip to page 237, and you'll see the Parkinson's 25. And we give you 25 recommendations to possibly slow your rate of progression and 25 recommendations to prevent the disease. Number 1 is to wash your produce, even your organic ones, because remnants of pesticides can be found on 20% of the common foods that we eat. So you can wash off some of these pesticides. When the FDA measures the residue of a pesticide on an apple before it is allowed on the market, it does so after it's held it under cold water for 15 to 20 seconds. That was about 5 seconds, and I'm still holding the apple. So if that's what the FDA is doing, what should you be doing? So we tell you to wash all your produce and get a little bit of vegetable wash, because I really worry about the fat-loving pesticides, because those fat-loving pesticides can cross our guts and get into our brain, which is fatty. So I really worry about fat-loving pesticides. So wash your fruit and vegetables with water and a little bit of vegetable wash, or vinegar or a salt solution might work as well. And then buy organic, even if you like dairy, because when you eat dairy, which I like cheese, when you're eating a cow, you're not just eating the cow, you're eating what the cow ate. And if the cow was fed pesticides that are fat-loving, guess what the cow does with a fat-loving pesticide? It puts it into its fat and puts it into its milk, and it concentrates it. So that when you're drinking the milk or you're eating the cheese, you're eating a concentrated levels of those pesticides. So if you like dairy like I do or meat, think about organic options. And we tell you other things, including making sure your grocery store is safe, getting an air purifier. If you have a well on your way home, you're stopping to get a carbon filter. You can get them in the grocery stores, Pure and Brita, whatever you want. Costco, I was told when I was in Traverse City on Tuesday, I was told Costco has some great ones. So you're going to do that. You're going to water purifier. You put it on your faucet, your kitchen sink, and you just push a switch, and you get your glass of water, and it's been reduced your exposure to pesticides that might be in your well. And if you want, you can test your well, Simple Labs, and others to do it. And we give you information in the book about how to do so. You're going to get a green dry cleaner. You are not poisoning yourself. The days of spraying nerve toxins, pesticides on your yard or inside your home are ending, right? We want to slow down the rate of progression of the disease. We do not want to fuel the fire. If you need to have pesticides used, you go away for the weekend. That's on prevention. Second, we need to learn why the disease is happening. Out of every Parkinson's research dollar, only 2 cents is spent on preventing the disease. I'm in New York City. There are homes that will be sold for more money today than we as a society spend on trying to prevent Parkinson's disease. 60% of research dollars in the United States, which spends more on research than any other country, is getting close with China. 60% of that's by pharmaceutical medical device firms who are trying to come up with better treatments. Most foundations are focused on getting a cure for the disease, but very, 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 very few foundations and very little federal money is being spent on what are the causes of the disease. We know what the genetic causes of the disease are. We need to figure out what the causes are for the 87% of Americans who do not carry a genetic cause or genetic risk factor for the disease. Parkinson's has an enormous economic burden. For every person in this room who has Parkinson's disease, the economic burden of that is at least $50,000 per person. Half of that's paid for by taxpayers in the forms of doctor's visits, visits to a physical therapist, DBS, speech therapy. Half of that's borne by you in the form of lost wages, caregiver support, and out-of-pocket expenses. There are over 1 million Americans with the disease. 1 million times 50,000 gets you to $50 billion a year, a lot of money. If we prevented just 1% of Parkinson's disease, the economic benefit of that would be $500 million per year. What's $500 million per year? That's double what the National Institutes of Health spent on Parkinson's research in 2024. That is more than the Michael J. Fox Foundation, the world's largest funder of Parkinson's research, spends annually. And that's more than the global sales, not profits, of the weed killer, paraquat. We must amplify the voices of those who are affected. How many of you are here? Some of you are young enough to participate in the March of Dimes. March of Dimes? Beautiful, right? So 1938, a person with polio, his name was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, endorsed the March of Dimes. In 1938, so many dimes were mailed into the White House, it shut it down. And you're no longer allowed to mail dimes into the White House. But if you look at a dime, do you know who's on the picture of the dime? Franklin Delano Roosevelt. That's why he's on the dime. 17 years after the March of Dimes began, Jonas Salk in Pittsburgh held up the first vaccine for polio, soon followed by Albert Sabin. We now live in a world where polio is largely entirely prevented. There are almost no polio doctors. The University of Michigan does not have a polio treatment center. There are no polio support groups. There are no polio companies developing new treatments for polio. There's just simply no polio. There's so little polio in the world that the March of Dimes doesn't even support polio anymore. That is the model by which we should follow. And we've seen this happen again. Thank you. In the 1980s, everyone in this room is young enough to remember the 1980s. A new disease was appearing among largely homosexual men in New York and in San Francisco and killing them, and no one knew what it was. There were experts thought that it was a nitrous gas. It turned out to be a new virus, a new disease. And in the setting of this new disease, which was killing people in New York and San Francisco, a group of activists led by the late Larry Kramer adopted a motto of silence equals death. Because if people with HIV were silent in the 1980s, they died. And they did die. And because of organizations like ACT UP, which made many of us uncomfortable, who made their voices heard, who barricaded themselves in the streets of New York, who overtook the New York Stock Exchange because a pharmaceutical company had the audacity to develop an effective treatment for HIV, but to price it too high. They overtook the Food and Drug Administration because they were too slow in developing treatments for HIV. Because of their activism, HIV is now preventable with a condom. More people receive appropriate treatment for HIV than they do for Parkinson's disease. More people around the world have access to more expensive, less safe, more complex medications for HIV than they do for levodopa. Because of the heroism of these individuals, we live in a world where HIV, the number of new cases of HIV is at its lowest level since 1990. We live in a world where HIV is no longer a top 10 leading cause of death. It's not even in the top 50. We live in a world that could possibly say goodbye to HIV in our lifetime. In 1980, the 13-year-old daughter of Candace Lightner was crossing the street in Sacramento when she was struck, lifted out of her shoes, and killed by a drunk driver who had been arrested with drinking and driving weeks or months earlier. In 1980, which many of you can remember, drinking and driving is legal in some states in the United States. 4 days after her daughter dies, Candace Lightner goes to the governor of California every day for a year. Every day for a year to make it so that by 8 years later, that drinking and driving is illegal in all 50 states. The drinking age is raised from 18 to 21. Blood alcohol levels drop to 0.08. Because of that, by 1988, 10,000 fewer children, 10,000 fewer families, 10,000 fewer schools, communities are torn apart from drinking and driving because of Candace Lightner and because of many of you in this room. To give you an idea what 10,000 is, some of you know about the rare genetic disease, Huntington's disease. That affects 30,000 Americans. In 3 years, Candace Lightner and MAD would have been able to have cured all of Huntington's disease in the United States. Because of MAD, some of us in this room are alive, including possibly me. Some in this room are not disabled, including possibly me. What a wonderful gift to be able to say, I have helped prevent death and disability and suffering, and no one even knows my name. In chapters 8 and 9 of the book, Dr. Michael Oken takes you on the new frontiers of treatments for Parkinson's disease. He tells you about the advantages of the levodopa pump. He tells you about new adaptive forms of deep brain stimulation that not just stimulate, but sense brainwave activity in the brain, and perhaps even sense how well we're walking or how much tremor we have, and so can modulate the activity of the deep brain stimulator based on the symptoms that you're experiencing. He tells you about the promise of stem cell therapies, and he tells you about the promise of little nanobots that could go in and clear misfolded proteins in your brain in the distant future. Last year, I moved from Rochester, New York, which has this wonderful spring weather that you're experiencing here in Livonia. And I moved to New York City to join an organization that wants to move healthcare from reactive sick care to proactive preventive care. What can we do to prevent people from getting from these brain diseases? So we create a center focused on the brain, the environment, to find out whether the environmental causes of brain diseases and to prevent them. So can we create a world where 1 in 31 children don't get autism, where intellectual disabilities are increasingly rare instead of increasingly common, where people don't get ALS, where soccer players don't get ALS, where people aren't getting brain cancer because they're breathing in trichloroethylene in their school in Franklin, Indiana, so that people like you don't get Parkinson's disease, and so that 1 in 3 85-year-old Americans no longer get Alzheimer's disease. And we want to do that by measuring some of the chemicals that are hiding in your body that might be contributing to these diseases. We want to measure some of these chemicals that might be hiding in your wells or in your household dust or in your soil, in your homes or your indoor air. And we want to investigate clusters of Parkinson's disease across the country. If you want to sign up to be part of our research studies, we have a brain registry that you can do so. If you have those QR codes on your table, you can do that. Or you can sign up for our registry in the back where the books are being distributed, and you can sign up for our free newsletter, and you can start to take action right now, today. So what can all of us do today to change the course of Parkinson's disease? How many know about the PD Avengers? No one knows PD Avengers. So the PD Avengers is ACT UP for the Parkinson's community. Is a global grassroots organization of individuals with Parkinson's disease led by people with Parkinson's disease. And you can join, it's free to join. There are 10,000 members in over 100 different countries. You can sign up using the QR code right here or the QR code on your desk, or if you are not tech savvy like me, you can just go and you can give us your email address. We'll even write down your email address because I know it's hard for some people with Parkinson's to write it, and you'll just check it off and we will sign you up for free. You'll get a newsletter about the PD Avengers, who on April 11th, on Saturday, are going to light up buildings across the country and around the world blue to increase awareness of Parkinson's disease. Join the PD Avengers right now. It'll take you 30 seconds to do so. You can sign up for our free newsletter and sign up for our research study registry, and you can spread the word. There are 600 people here with Parkinson's disease. There are 1.2 million Americans with Parkinson's disease. You need to tell 10 of your friends, with or without Parkinson's disease, that Parkinson's disease is not a natural consequence of aging, that Parkinson's disease is largely a man-made disease. It's preventable. It's not inevitable. And then in your communities, all of us can contact our schools and a teacher, a principal, the grounds crew, and ask them to stop spraying pesticides on kids' schools and playgrounds. Kids don't mind weeds, kids like weeds. If you like to play golf, you can contact your golf course and ask them to stop spraying. Two of the most toxic pesticides are chlorpyrifos, hard word to spell, and 2,4-D, easy word to spell, and just ask them, are you spraying this, and perhaps can we spray less of this at least? Can they, if you live near a golf course, can they at least do the decency of notifying you when they're going to spray so you can close your windows, turn on your air purifier, and maybe leave the home for that period of time? And on a national level, you can contact the EPA administrator. His name is Lee Zeldin. He works for you. He works for you. His email address is zeldin.lee@epa.gov. You can say, Dear Administrator Zeldin, thank you very much for your service. Can you please ban paraquat? Can you please ban chlorpyrifos? Can we ensure that TCE and PCE are banned so we can prevent Parkinson's disease for future generations? The fate of these diseases are in the hands of those who are most directly affected by it. All of you are directly affected by Parkinson's disease, as are 1.2 million Americans, as are your spouses, your caregivers, your partners, your friends, and families. If you make your voices heard, if you contact your representatives, if you contact your schools, if you contact your golf courses, if you clean your water, if you take action to reduce your exposure to pesticides, you bring about the fall of Parkinson's disease. You bring about the fall of Parkinson's disease. The fall of Parkinson's disease begins here, it begins today, and it begins in Livonia. Thank you very much.